Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, my name is Amy and I have an unhealthy obsession with Formula 1. The 2022 Singapore Grand Prix was this weekend, so let's talk about it. But first, your championship update. For the first time, Max Verstappen had the opportunity to wrap up the championship this weekend, but was unable to do so. Instead, Charles and Checo were both able to close the gap slightly. However, Max still has a significant lead, and if he wins against the fastest lap next race, and even if Checo or Charles come second, he still won it. In terms of the constructors, there were two teams that were able to make serious gains and make the most of a chaotic race in Singapore, that being McLaren and Aston Martin, but more on both of them later. What this means in terms of the standings is McLaren has now re-overtaken Alpine for 4th, and Aston Martin has been able to jump both Haas and AlphaTauri for 7th. What an absolutely chaotic Grand Prix we had at a rain-soaked, slowly drying Singapore track that saw 60 DNFs after the race was delayed over an hour due to bad weather, causing the track to just be a little bit slippy at the start. Our first set of DNFs was caused by none other than the GOAT himself, Nicholas Latifi, who just sent it into the side of Guan Yu Zhou, ending both of the races early and causing the first of 3 safety cars. I mean, what did you expect from Nicholas at this point? I swear. This was soon followed by an Alonso retirement, which I don't think was the way he wanted to be spending his 350th race in the sport, but anyway. A couple of laps later, he was joined by his teammate Ocon in what would be a double technical DNF for Alpine. The next player to drop was the second Williams of Alex Albon, who probably had the slowest paced trip to the barriers you have ever seen, before limping back home to the pits whilst the marshals attempted to remove his front wing from under the barrier. The final retirement of the race came in the form of Yuki Tsunoda, who crashed on lap 35 to bring out yet another safety car just in time as everybody had started to pit for slicks, meaning there were some serious gainers from this little trip to the barriers. So yeah, when I say chaos, I mean it. And there were some other really big names that were making some serious mistakes, like Verstappen and Hamilton. A bit of a missed race, but at least it was somewhat entertaining given the fact it was 2 hours long. Speaking of messy, we should probably talk about Max this weekend, just in general, starting with qualifying. Now, qualifying was interesting, as like the race, it took place on a slowly drying track, meaning that the drivers would get faster and faster each lap that they did, as the water was, This meant that the best times were going to be set right at the end of Q3. As was Charles, the man who eventually got pole, his best lap was his final lap. However, Verstappen on his penultimate lap did look set to take pole position, at least provisionally, until his team told him to back off going into the last sector in order to get more battery to go on another flying lap. Because obviously the track would be just a little bit drier, he'd be able to go just a little bit faster. And in a game where tenths matter, it wasn't a bad idea. This was a serious miscalculation from Red Bull in the end, as Max was going through that final lap, his team called him into box before he could finish. They had miscalculated the amount of petrol he had. So therefore, if he didn't box, he wouldn't have been able to provide a sample for the FIA, meaning chances are he would have started from the pit lane. So, Drill shot 8th, then last, I guess, but still a serious mistake from a team who rarely makes them. If this was Ferrari, we would be slandering them for days, but you can forgive Red Bull for slipping up every once in a while. Now to the race start. Verstappen's was awful. Going into anti-stall due to the fact he was in the wrong engine mode and dropping 5 places at the start, meaning that he was down to 12th and had a serious amount of work to do if he was going to catch the top 3. And his fortunes didn't improve and he made a lot of mistakes during the race. One that sort of stood out to me was at the virtual safety car restart against Lando, where it looked like he wanted to go early, but then didn't really time it right, so just had a major lock-up, meaning that Lando just sped on ahead. However, on the other side of the garage, Perez had an excellent race, getting the lead into turn 1 and managing to hold off Leclerc for the entire event, managing safety car restarts, some a bit more controversial than others, but still managing to stay ahead. And he was able to defend well against Leclerc when he was really close for a couple of laps, just after DRS had been opened, so good job Checo. and then at the end of the race gaining a 7.5 second advantage, which was good because he got a 5-second penalty after the race, was still able to keep that win. So yes, an incredible drive from the Mexican, and probably his best, I would say, at Red Bull so far. However, not his best drive ever. That goes to Sakhir, last to first. Immaculate. Now onto a team who for once didn't have mixed fortunes and instead capitalized on that late safety car from Yuki Tsunoda, McLaren. With a P4 for Lando and a P5 for Danny, they were able to take best of the rest this weekend. This was again thanks to that lap 35 safety car that allowed them to pit onto slicks after most of the field had pit the lap previous. But both McLaren drivers and the team decided they wanted to stay out just a little bit longer, meaning that they were both able to gain from a cheap pit stop. Don't get me wrong, they both had excellent races up to that point, with Danny coming back from an awful qualifying, starting in P16, getting up to P5, Lando jumping Alonso on the start to get ahead of McLaren's main rivals Alpine, and also defending really well against Max. This was all something that I believe the team, and particularly Danny, really needed. Particularly Daniel after his recent run of bad form and being dropped by McLaren for next season. This should hopefully be a good confidence boost and a sign to other teams on the grid that he still has it. You can see how happy he was after that result, and it's just so amazing to see it. Such a big smile returns to Aussie's face because nobody likes it when Daniel's dropped. And as I said earlier, this has reignited that fight for fourth in the constructors after it seemed like Alpine was going to be running away from it. The last team I wanted to go into detail about is Mercedes, and it seemed like they really dropped the ball this weekend. Not really from a team's point of view, it's just both of the drivers had an absolutely horrendous race. And at a venue that was supposed to really suit the car and perhaps be the strongest race weekend of the season, and maybe the only one where they'd actually be able to score a win, they were nowhere. Let's start with the driver who had the least bad race, Lewis Hamilton. Starting in third, he quickly dropped to fourth after the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz overtook him. Hamilton made a few more uncharacteristic mistakes in the wet, including a little trip to the barriers on lap 33 that saw him and Verstappen meet again on track. And in the dying stages of the race, he attempted to overtake Vettel but locked up, causing him to finish the race down in 9th after starting third. However, compared to his teammate, he seemed rather lucky. George wasn't able to reach Q3 on Saturday, and because of this the team decided to give him a whole bunch of new engine components, resulting in him starting from the pit lane at a track that is already so hard to overtake at. This was only compounded when the team decided to pit him for slicks about 10 laps too early, and he spent about 10 laps just trundling around seconds of the pace, just dropping further and further back. But George was stubborn and decided to stay out on them, so brave, I guess. Then despite several safety car periods, and thanks to a number of mistakes and incidents with other drivers, such as this one with Mick Schumacher, George finished 14th, which is technically last on the road considering we had 60 DNFs. In a car that is third best. Not a great weekend from Georgie boy, and Mr. Consistent has finally broken his streak of finishing in the top 5 at every race he's actually finished this season. So overall, a shocking weekend for Mercedes. Guess we can skip a segment this week because Ferrari had actually pretty much 0 screw-ups and had a double podium finish, so good job for them. Didn't know they did that. And to conclude, some drivers and teams who I think still had an outstanding weekend and deserve a gold star in my books. First off, I know he didn't technically finish the race, but Alex Albon. Can we acknowledge how weeks ago he was in surgery on life support, a ventilator, everything, to going and competing in the most physically demanding race of the entire season? It's seriously impressive. And of course, we can't forget Aston Martin, a double points finish to bring them to 7th in the Constructors, and a 6th place finish for Lance Stroll. So brings my weekend wrap video to a wrap. Thank you so much for watching, and let me know your favourite moments in the comments down below. And if you like this video, then like it and press that red button to subscribe for more F1 and motorsport related content. And I'll see you on the next one. Laters.